I want to talk briefly a story that a number of viewers said, David, you should really talk about this. And this relates to a requested recount in Florida in the presidential election results over a lawsuit. Now, I'm going to discuss it not because I believe that there was really great news from Florida, but because enough people in our audience have asked about it. And if a dozen people have emailed me about this, there are probably many, many more who also are curious about this. There are some, I would call them more partial websites talking about a lawsuit in Florida as a major development. That alleged voter fraud in Florida is triggering a recount, which might flip the results from Trump to Clinton. That is quite an exaggeration. What is happening is that 3 Florida voters have filed a lawsuit. They say that Donald Trump didn't really win the Florida presidential election. Why? Well, they say that it's because of hacking, malfunctioning voting machines, and other problems. Their demand is for a hand recount of every paper ballot in Florida. They may actually run out of time before this even gets going. An Orlando attorney who's representing these 3 plaintiffs, his name is Clint Curtis, said that the defendants may not even respond by the time that the Electoral College meets on December 19th. And he said that he has received a deluge of reports from voters across the state of problems on Election Day, people being turned away at the polls, people being told you've already voted, even though they believe that they haven't, and more of what the Florida Division of Elections calls minor issues. I think that it is really important, Pat, for progressives not to pay too much attention to this. The margin in Florida, the margin of victory for Trump was 112,000 votes. It is very unlikely that this recount is even going to get going. Even if a recount got going, if you really believe that there was hacking, you actually need an audit to uncover that. And a recount, even if it happens, which it probably won't, is insanely unlikely to change a 112,000 vote margin of victory.
And even if it did, Florida only has 29 electoral votes, which is far short of the 37 you would need to block Trump from getting the presidency.
Another good point.
You'd also have to pick up Pennsylvania or Wisconsin. It's a long shot, but I think it really just goes to the idea that Florida has to get it together. We've gone through these national embarrassments with that state before.
And when you look specifically at some of the counties in Florida, I know this is like a broken record, but the machines they use are the same machines that are used in some of the not contested officially, but reportedly sketchy counties in other important states like Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. So that voting machine thing continues to be in the background. My advice to progressives, don't hold your breath, because this is so unlikely to happen. And even if it does, I talked to you about the difference between a recount and an audit. And this was why when the entire Jill Stein recount thing got going, I didn't really have high hopes for it, because even if I believed that there had been something shady in those states and the exit poll data versus the reported voting data is at minimum raising some pretty fair questions. When you look at a recount, you're not actually following the path from the intention of a voter to cast a vote for candidate A all the way through the handling of the ballot to whether that person's intention was actually reflected in how the vote was counted. That is what an audit is. And that's not even what was being discussed, Pat. And I've been making this point like a broken record, and I think some people get it and some still don't.
I really wonder what the odds makers have for stopping Donald Trump. What method is more likely, an electoral revolt or the recounts going the opposite way?
I think the electoral revolt, as unlikely as it is the most likely path to stopping Trump. I don't think recounts and this type of lawsuit is actually going to make a difference.